Let's talk prison escapes. My name is Jesse, and I spent 19 years in the Virginia prison system, and I want to tell you 4 stories. First, I want to tell you about Billy, my buddy who tried to escape from the Supermax. I want to tell you about the scissor lift escape attempt. I want to tell you about the guy who got away, came back, got caught, and tried to break out again. And then I want to tell you about the guy who got away. So, first was Billy. He was sent to Red Onion, which is Virginia's Supermax, because he was suspected of trying to break out of the prison he was at first. And while he was there, he had this plan, and he formulated things, and he went through it. It was probably the most elaborate escape attempt, because he actually coordinated guys to get into a fight in the gym so that all the officers would run to an all-hands-on-deck call so he could sneak out the back of the building while he was at work, climb over the electric fence, climb up to the top of the building, and then he was going to jump to the front. And this is where his plan fell apart. Because they had these doors where only one door can be open at a time, so you can never just walk through. And he was going to have to go through that. And he was convinced that somehow he could figure out a way to get through, or maybe if he ran and right when one door was closing, he'd get in and they wouldn't notice him, or maybe, I don't know what he was thinking, but it was a serious flaw in his plan, because what he was going to end up doing was getting locked in this room because they were just going to close both doors when he was in there. But he made it to the top of the building, and somebody spotted him. And so he was like, all right, I have to run for it, because the door to the building he was looking to get through, which actually led to the outside, was open. So he ran and he jumped off the building, and if he could have landed just on the flat spot, he might have been okay and rolled, but he landed on the base, the concrete base for one of the light poles, and he landed and he broke his foot and he broke his ankle and he couldn't roll out of it. And so they all got there and they did not treat him well. He did not do physically well. They took him, they drug him down to the hole, they took all his clothes, they put him in handcuffs and shackles and left him there, naked in the hole for 24 hours. Now, eventually they gave him medical care, they got him fixed up, and they stuck him in the hole for a very, very long time. But one officer came by, and he talks about how meaningful this was. The officer came by, opened the slot, and called him by his last name, was like, you tried him. I'll give it to you. You tried him. I've never seen anybody try that before. I'm proud of you. And at the same time, I guess, when you're in the hole, where you're getting more time, when everything's terrible, you take what you can get. That was the validation he was looking for. And it ended up, he was in their training video. So, now if you go work at that institution, they have a training video that includes what to look out for in case somebody's trying to escape. So then we had the scissor lift. And this was when I was at Nottoway. So these guys decided these jig scissor lifts, these things that you use to lift up to the side of the buildings to work on windows or work on whatever, they were going to steal that, and they thought they could get out the fences. They could either run them over because it was motorized, or they could get it high enough to make it tilt and just get them over the fences. The way it worked is you had the building, you had a fence, you had a long rec yard, and then you had 2 more fences. But in their mind, they were thinking, okay, even though it's right next to the building, we can get out. So they went, they grabbed one of the guards, they tied him up, they took his uniform, the one person took his uniform on, thinking, okay, this will be okay. So then they're on there and they're trying to operate it. And rather than just taking the time to find the keys and open the gate to get out the way they had gotten in, which would look a lot more normal than trying to ram the fence, they just went for it. And they just started ramming the fence. Have you ever seen these fences? They're dug so deep in the ground that you're not going to just run out. You're not going to just get away. So they're just going, and the fence is kind of bowing like this, and you hear this all-hands-on-deck call. The guy in the tower's got the rifle out, people are running that have never run in their lives, it's just a bizarre situation. So finally they get there, and they let the canines loose. And the guys have weapons, that's how they manage to abduct a guard. So the canine goes up, starts biting him, and he stabs the dog. And now everybody's mad. People are mad about the dog, people are mad about what's going on. So when they finally get him off the lift, they beat them so badly that there is a line of blood from the lift down to the hole where they drugged them unconscious. They obviously did not get away. They got a lot of charges besides the escape attempt. They got the thing for stabbing a dog, which is a very serious offense. Next time was also at Nottoway. This was a guy who had gotten away. So this was probably 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. He had gotten away, but he promised his best friend, his stickman, he said, I'll be back for you. So he lived out of prison free for 5 years and then came back to help break his buddy out and got caught. So at this point, he'd been in prison for, I guess, another 20 years. He'd gotten a little older, but he used to run all the time. We used to notice, man, this guy literally runs 20 miles a clip. What is he doing? And it makes sense now. We know he was training because if he ever got out, he wouldn't be able to run long distance to get where he needed to go. But because he was older, he wasn't nearly in the shape that he was trying to just go over the fence. And he had an elaborate bodysuit, he had blankets to throw over the fence and the razor wire. He had a setup, but he wasn't young and kind of spry like he used to be. So there was an officer. I heard 2 things. One, the officer was doing rounds, and the other, he was just sitting out the back of the jail smoking a cigarette. Because at Nottoway, you had the hole or the jail, and you had the honor pod right next to each other. So he managed to get out at night for work because he pushed a laundry cart. And he managed to run around to the back of the building, get over the one small fence, and then get to the 2 outside fences that had razor wire. Apparently the guy saw him and was like, man, I think he's, wait. Went, grabbed him, threw him on the ground, got him on the radio, and that was it. The guy was now in the hole, and he was never going to be able to work his way down, because now with one successful escape and another escape attempt, they were going to keep him somewhere locked inside. And then we have the guy who got away. So in Buckingham County, you have two prisons right across the street from each other. You have Buckingham Correctional and you have Dillwyn Correctional. You can literally see from one prison to the other because in these poor areas, they bring prisons in to create jobs, but then everybody comes relying on the prison and it's just a problem. But Dillwyn was a level 2, so it was a lower security level, and they were a lot more lax. But the guy who did it, I think, had a mental health breakdown. Like, I don't think this was like the healthiest idea, because he didn't have something to throw over the razor wire, he didn't have a bodysuit, like he didn't do a lot of planning, he just went and ran for the fence. And as he described it, there were chunks of his flesh left in the razor wire because he made it over, but he left some of himself behind. They caught him less than 24 hours later in his mother's basement because he apparently didn't have anywhere else to go. So he obviously must have gotten a ride, but rather than planning it out, he's in his mother's basement, like bleeding, doing terrible, like not in good shape, and he ends up losing several fingers. So he got away for less than 24 hours, lost, I think, 4 fingers, and is now going to do 5 extra years. So it's like, okay, a really poor attempt. And the kind of honorable mention I'll put in here, and this is actually a really sad story. This was an old guy that we believe was trying to get shot. Because the policy is if you go over the fence, they're supposed to shoot you rather than let you get away. So he went, and he could barely walk without a walker. He'd been in prison for a long time. Like, he was just depressed and miserable. And he went to the inside fence, not even the outside too, but the inside of the rec yard, and he hit it, and he was like trying to climb, but I mean, he wasn't even like making it up a foot. Like, he was just kind of hanging on the fence. And rather than pulling out the rifle or threatening, the person in the tower was like, hey, I think you need to come get this guy. Like, I don't think he's okay. And in a weird way, it was one of the sweetest things I saw, because normally if you're trying to escape or you're fighting or something, they're going to come tackle you, they're going to come mace you, they're going to come beat you. Instead, the sergeant came out there and was like, hey, man, like, come on, let's go inside. Let's go talk to mental health. Like, come on. Just literally put his arm around this guy and walked him back inside. So in a weird way, it was kind of a sweet moment from a tragic event.